And the final straw between Jesus and the temple leaders was not something that Jesus said. It was something that Jesus did. It was not a conversation. It was not a confrontation. It was an act of compassion. Jesus raised someone from the dead, and not just anyone. He raised a very famous citizen of Bethany, the city of Bethany. He raised who from the dead? That's right, Lazarus. This was the final straw. What was the pinnacle of his miracles? What was the most amazing thing possible? Because not only had Lazarus died, Lazarus had been what? Buried. That's right. These people in Bethany had been to the funeral, and the next thing you know, they're seeing Lazarus walking around. So this was like over the top, and I mean the crowd just swelled and swelled and swelled. And they realized, the religious leaders, and Caiaphas in particular, realized that their strategy was failing. And their strategy up to that time was to try to discredit Jesus publicly. That's why when you read the Gospels, they're constantly asking Jesus all these trick questions. And every time they think they've got him, Jesus comes back with a snappy answer, and they look stupid, and the people are like, go Jesus, you know? And so because what they were trying to do, the point of those questions was to try to divide Jesus from the crowd. They wanted Jesus to lose the crowd, because once Jesus loses the crowd, he is no longer a threat to the peace that they had established with Rome. So, for example, after Lazarus had been raised from the dead, here's what John, who saw all of this, was an eyewitness of all of this. Here's what John writes. He says this in John chapter 12. Now the crowd that was with him when he called Lazarus from the tomb and raised him from the dead continued to spread the word. So this crowd of people that knew about this miracle, they're telling everybody in the vicinity. So many people, continues, many people, because they had heard that he had performed this sign, went out to meet him. So now you got a crowd and a bigger crowd and even a bigger crowd. And the Pharisees and the leaders of the temple are just throwing their hands up, and they're thinking, wow, where is this going? How is this ever going to end? So the Pharisees said to one another, see, this is getting us nowhere. And this was their strategy to try to discredit Jesus with the people by asking him all these tricky questions. It's getting us nowhere. Look how, and I love this. Look how the whole world has gone after him. Now, you need to know this. This is way, fast forward way ahead. In the book of Acts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, the book of Acts that tells us what happened in the church after Jesus was raised from the dead, the book of Acts tells us, Luke, who investigated all these things, Luke tells us that many, many priests and Pharisees later became followers of Jesus. That's how John has the inside track to all this information. Later on, when John is investigating and Luke's investigating, some of these priests that eventually followed Jesus and some of these Pharisees that eventually became followers of Jesus said, John, you can't believe this meeting. We were so frustrated no matter what we did, no matter what we said, no matter what we came up with. Jesus made us look like fools over and over and over. And so John writes this in his gospel. Then we said at one point in one of those meetings, look, the whole world has gone after him, and surely they laughed out loud, because little did they know, 2,000 years later, come on, a third. I mean, if they think their whole world went after Jesus in Judea, today a third of the world's population declares that Jesus is somebody special. A third of the world's population almost declares that Jesus is Lord. They had no idea what they were on the front end of. Immediately following Lazarus, the miracle of Lazarus coming back to life, there's another conversation that went like this. John records it. He says, then, right after they found out that Lazarus had been raised from the dead, then the chief priest and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. Now, this means almost nothing to us, but let me tell you how significant this is. This is three different groups. There's a little bit of crossover. This is three different groups that did not get along. They didn't see eye to eye theologically. The Sadducees that were a part of this group, they didn't think there was such thing as a resurrection. The Pharisees, most of the Pharisees thought there was. They didn't get along politically. They didn't have the same idea about how Israel should relate to Rome. These three groups didn't get along. This would be like the House and the Senate, the Republicans and Democrats and the Supreme Court all coming together and agreeing on something. That's how significant this is, but that's how big of a threat they viewed Jesus to be. And so they said together in this meeting that John found out later about, what are we accomplishing? In other words, what are we doing? I mean, this is crazy. The harder we try, the bigger the crowds grow. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is this man performing many signs. They're way overstepping their sense of authority and bounds. If we let him go on like this, as if they were the ones letting him go on like this, if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him.